In the bustling town of Raghavpur, there lived a wealthy merchant named Ramesh. Known throughout the region for his shrewd business acumen, Ramesh had accumulated immense wealth. He owned several shops, a grand mansion, and a large number of servants. Despite his affluence, Ramesh was never satisfied. He constantly sought ways to expand his wealth. Ramesh's greed was not only for money but also for power and influence. He often exploited the poor and manipulated the market to maximize his profits. Many people in Raghavpur admired his success, but others resented him for his unethical practices. One day, as Ramesh sat in his lavish office counting his earnings, an old sage appeared at his door. The sage, with a calm and serene demeanor, approached Ramesh and said, "Greetings, great merchant. I have heard of your prosperity and wisdom. I bring you a piece of advice that could change your life." Ramesh, always curious about anything that could increase his wealth, welcomed the sage warmly. "Please, wise one, share your advice. I am always eager to learn more." The sage smiled and said, "In a faraway land, there lies a hidden treasure beyond your wildest dreams. It is buried under an ancient tree in the Valley of Solitude. The treasure is so vast that even your descendants would never run out of it. But beware, for the journey is fraught with challenges, and only a man with a pure heart and noble intentions can retrieve it." Ramesh's eyes lit up with excitement. The thought of even more wealth made his heart race. Ignoring the sage's warning, he decided he would embark on the journey immediately. The sage noticed Ramesh's greed and sighed, knowing the merchant was likely to face hardships ahead. Determined, Ramesh closed his shops, sold some of his property, and gathered a small team of trusted men to accompany him. They set off the next day, traveling for weeks across rugged terrains, dense forests, and treacherous mountains. The journey was far more arduous than Ramesh had anticipated. Several of his men fell ill or abandoned the quest, unable to endure the hardships. But Ramesh, driven by greed and the promise of untold wealth, pressed on. Finally, after months of grueling travel, Ramesh and his remaining men reached the Valley of Solitude. It was a desolate place, surrounded by towering cliffs and filled with eerie silence. In the center of the valley stood an ancient tree, its twisted branches stretching out like the fingers of a giant. "This must be the tree," Ramesh exclaimed, his voice trembling with excitement. He ordered his men to start digging around the tree. They dug for hours, and just as they were about to give up, one of the shovels struck something hard. Ramesh's heart skipped a beat. With renewed vigor, they continued digging until they unearthed a large, ornate chest. The chest was covered in intricate designs and symbols. Ramesh's hands trembled as he pried it open. Inside, he found gold coins, jewels, and priceless artifacts. More wealth than he had ever imagined. Ramesh's eyes gleamed with a manic joy. "I am the richest man in the world," he shouted, his voice echoing through the valley. But as he reached into the chest to take the treasure, he felt a sharp pain in his hand. He looked down to see a snake coiled around his arm, its fangs sunk deep into his flesh. In his haste and greed, Ramesh had not noticed the serpent guarding the treasure. His men recoiled in fear, and no one dared approach to help him. As the venom spread through his body, Ramesh felt his strength ebbing away. He collapsed to the ground, the chest of treasure still open beside him. Lying there, helpless and in pain, Ramesh realized the folly of his greed. He had sacrificed everything, his comfort, his health, and even his relationships, for this treasure. And now, at the moment of his greatest triumph, he was paying the ultimate price. As his vision blurred, the words of the sage echoed in his mind. "Only a man with a pure heart and noble intentions can retrieve the treasure." Ramesh understood too late that the treasure was never meant for someone like him. In his final moments, Ramesh felt a profound sense of regret. He thought of all the people he had wronged in his pursuit of wealth, the friends and family he had neglected, and the joy he had forsaken for the sake of accumulating more and more. Tears filled his eyes as he realized the true value of what he had lost. With a final shuddering breath, Ramesh's hand slipped from the chest, and his body lay still. His men, too frightened to stay, fled the valley, leaving the merchant and his cursed treasure behind. Years passed, and the story of the greedy merchant and the hidden treasure became a cautionary tale in Raghavpur. People spoke of Ramesh's fate as a warning against unchecked ambition and the perils of greed. The Valley of Solitude remained untouched, the treasure buried beneath the ancient tree, guarded by the serpent and the memory of Ramesh's tragic end. The town of Raghavpur changed over time. A new generation of merchants rose, but they remembered the lesson of the greedy Ramesh. They conducted their business with integrity, treated their customers and workers fairly, and used their wealth to improve the community. Among them was a young man named Arjun, who had been a servant in Ramesh's household as a child. Arjun had watched the rise and fall of the greedy merchant and had learned from it. He started his own small business and, through hard work and honesty, became successful. Unlike Ramesh, Arjun was content with what he had. He helped those in need, supported local schools, and invested in projects that benefited the town. One day, the old sage who had visited Ramesh came to Arjun's shop. He looked at Arjun with a twinkle in his eye and said, "You remind me of someone I once knew, but you have chosen a wiser path. Remember, true wealth is not measured by the gold you possess, but by the goodness in your heart." Arjun bowed respectfully and replied, "Thank you, wise one. I have seen the consequences of greed and have learned that happiness lies not in possessing more, but in being content and doing good." The sage smiled and handed Arjun